Okay, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We're going to start now. Thank you very much for coming this morning. Welcome to meeting 2 of the Infrastructure and Environment Committee, and welcome to members of the committee, at least the ones who are here, and to other members of council in attendance who may come later. For those in the room with us, the screen at the back of the room provides real-time updates concerning where we are on the agenda and what's coming up next. You can always follow the agenda debate on your computer, tablet, or smartphone at toronto.ca/council. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the New Credit. That was okay, Councillor Layton? I'm working on my pronunciation.
They need to put it phonetically.
They do, and I still struggle. My God, I'm exhausted already, and the meeting hasn't even started. Are there any declarations of interest in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? And they've actually, I'm obligated to read a section here. Members, I want to take the moment to remind you that when you declare an interest in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, you are now required to file a written declaration with the clerk. The clerk has provided blank forms to every member's office and asks you to complete the form and bring them with you to the meetings each time you declare an interest. If you forgot to bring your form, the clerk's staff can provide you with one, which should be complete and submit before the end of the meeting. If you need more information on our obligations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, you can always call the Integrity Commissioner's office. I believe the clerk has a few copies, as well as an interpretive bulletin. And if you require advice, I encourage you to reach out to the Integrity Commissioner directly. Could I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the January 17th, 2019 meeting? Councillor McKelvey, all those in favor? Carried. So we don't have deputations today, so we'll quickly go through the agenda. There's a presentation, so we'll be seeing that. Item IE 2.2, FG Gardiner Expressway and Don Valley Parkway closure, Heart and Stroke Foundation of Ontario, and we're doing it for years 2019, 2020, 2021, Ride for the Heart event.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Councillor Layton is moving the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 3, Eastbound Gardiner Expressway, Northbound Don Valley Parkway closures, 2019, 2020, 2021 Toronto Triathlon Festival.
If I could, just to make a very brief statement. Last Wednesday, I had a lobbyist in my office for some plastics company, and they were actually an international triathlete, and I happened to remember that this was on there. And if Councillor Minnan-Wong was chair when I think we did the first triathlon closure, and I was a bit of a skeptic, but I asked how our Toronto event was faring. It's actually faring quite well internationally, and we're hosting some Worlds coming up in a couple years. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's a major global event around triathlon. So I'm glad to hear that that the event came from really nothing to become quite prominent. Even
I do remember when it first came before us.
Yeah, those are the swimming. That's the swimming component of the triathlon.
Okay.
I'll move the staff.
Yeah, Councillor Layton moving the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 4, amendment to non-competitive contract with Tacel Limited for Polara accessible pedestrian signal, APS. Who's going to hold it? Councillor Minnan-Wong is holding item 4. Item 5, suspension of Aplus General Contractors Corp. They have submitted, I believe, an item, some correspondence has been submitted on this item. It is being distributed, or it is distributed? Yeah, I found it surprising because I was sort of, yep, that's yes, they are not here to depute. They have brought some correspondence to the clerk's office, and it's been distributed. Okay, I should remind committee members this is in the courts, and let them fight it out there. All those in favor, the recommendations have been moved. Opposed? That is carried. Litigation arising from contract MCP 13-18WS for Ellesmere Pumping Station power generators upgrade.
I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay, a reminder, there's a confidential attachment. Recommendations are moved by Councillor Layton. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 7, non-competitive contract to Plan Group, Inc. and purchase order amendment to Cole Engineering Group Limited for the completion of the Ellesmere Pumping Station power generators upgrade. Members, what would you like to do with item 7? It's moved by Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong. Yeah. We're going to move it? Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 7 is moved. So we have three new items. One is, I'll take carriage of it from Councillor Kristen Wong-Tam. This is regarding coordination of City of Toronto TTC infrastructure projects affecting Shooter Street and Victoria Street. It will be distributed for your consideration. 2 items from myself. One is having staff consider expediting some of the ready-to-go basement flooding mitigation projects, and getting a group together to resolve a construction issue in Ward 6 that's been plaguing us for about a year. These will be distributed, and I need a motion to add the new business, the 3 items. Councillor Layton, all those in favor? That is carried. So the clerk will distribute, I think one's been distributed, the other 2, and we'll address those at the end of the meeting, which could be very soon. So item 4, Councillor Minnan-Wong, you held item 4 down. Do you have questions for staff?
How much are we increasing the contract amount? From what to what?
For you, Mr. Chair, we're basically increasing the contract value from roughly about $2 million to roughly about $3 million, so by about $1 million.
So that's a 50% increase. Why can't we put out another, that's a lot of money, 50% increase, and in my opinion, we see far too many of these coming before committee. Why can't we put out another tender or RFP?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're basically looking to accelerate all the elements of the Vision Zero Road Safety Plan, and we found this would be the most expeditious way to sort of proceed ahead. When we put out the tender a couple of years ago, this was the most competitive price for that particular product coming back, and not much has really changed in the industry, so we kind of anticipate that if we were to go back to market, the pricing we would get would be essentially the same.
When you put out the contract the last time, how many people bid?
Through you, Mr. Chair, only one other.
And how competitive were they?
It was, sorry? It was one total complete bid. Oh, they're the sole providers.
Were they close?
There was just one bid that came in.
This is sole source?
Yeah, so there's no other, at this point in time, no other company that provides that particular product that meets the needs of the Ontario AODA.
So only Tacel Limited offers this solution?
Through you, Mr. Chair, for those particular electronics components, yes. there's a number of elements that basically go into building an accessible pedestrian signal. The push button itself and the receiver that goes in the controller cabinet, just those particular components. There's just one vendor that actually meets the province's requirements right now.
So are you saying it's a very specific spec and we cannot go outside those requirements?
Through Mr. Chair, that's correct. It's basically, this is just very specific components, and there's compatibility issues within the controller cabinets. It's a very unique specific component.
Okay. We don't have any other choice but to vote for it, but I don't like this arrangement where we have a sole source contract where we only go to one company. That doesn't smell right to me.
Do you want to speak to it?
No, I am speaking to it.
That's your speech?
Yeah, we should be very, very careful when we only have one company that complies with the requirements. That's not what we should be doing. And for like, what is it, $3 million or something like this? You would think that there might be other companies that would be interested in it. So we have no choice, but I don't particularly like voting for this.
Well, I think part of the problem, as expressed in the report, is you want harmonization of technology. If you replace one of these systems at a crosswalk and there are 6 systems, you have to get the same company to replace. If you change one, and okay.
I'm not arguing, Mr. Chair. I'm not arguing with you. I said I'm going to vote for it, but I'm not voting for it happily.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions for staff? Any other speakers?
You make a speech and say so. We could change the procedural bylaw. You can bring a notice of motion on the happy face thing, and I'd be happy to second it.
Okay. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Okay, we're done with the formal part of the agenda. We're now going to new items. The first item that was distributed was from Councillor Kristen Wong-Tam. Yeah, and there's a third one. We
Well, we'll add a lot of pauses, so you'll have time to read.
Okay, that's a good idea. Why don't we go to the presentation while we prepare the new items?
Good morning. This will be gripping, Deputy Mayor. I'm joined with our other 2 DCMs, Ms. Carboni and Ms. Scioli. So thank you for the opportunity this morning to talk about what this committee is going to be talking about and the divisions that support it. So we'll go very quickly through the committee overview. So what the committee is struck for, as you're already starting to see business, who's reporting to you, and the nature of the reports that you'll be seeing. Just reviewing the mandate of the committee, I think it's pretty evident, certainly by the way it's named, primarily dealing with matters related to infrastructure and the natural environment as well. Let's keep going. There are a number of divisions that are supporting this committee. These are the division heads of them all, and it represents representation from all 3 service groups within the city, and I'll speak to each of these divisions as we go through them. Starting in the Infrastructure and Development Services Service Group, and our Engineering and Construction Services team headed by Mr. Michael DeAndrea. A suite of 5 directors that support him and the work that they do. And ECS is really the delivery agent for a number of the divisions in our large major capital infrastructure work, in addition to participating as a key participant in the development application review process, and have undertaken significant work in respect to building bridge construction or bridge condition audits, and ensuring that we're keeping our city's bridge infrastructure safe on an ongoing basis. In 2018, it's a staggering amount of work that's been accomplished by ECS, work in the billions of dollars across all types of infrastructure around the city. Over $500 million building municipal infrastructure last year alone, and that's spread across Toronto Water, Transportation Services, and meaningful bit of work for our solid waste management team. They've issued over 127 tender calls and actually awarded new construction contracts valued at over $1.4 billion. So certainly a large portfolio of work. When we look at what's coming, referencing last year and the significance of that spend, you can see in this year and the next couple, a significant growth in the scale and size and spend on large capital projects that ECS will be undertaking. It includes biosolids management equipment upgrades at the Highland Creek wastewater treatment plant, trunk sewer rehabilitation projects, and a great deal more on sewers and water mains and all the linear and underground infrastructure. In addition to making sure everything's built well, ECS is leading the charge in two fronts. One, bringing the city up to speed on changes to the Construction Act, which will have a citywide impact in how we manage and administrate construction contracts, or administer construction contracts, sorry. And the Supply Chain Transformation Project. ECS is leading the charge on a new way of procuring with the RFP recently released for the standalone water main replacement. That will be a first of its kind. We're looking at multi-year tenders, working with the industry as well in a new approach to procurement. So ECS is certainly contributing across the corporation in those respects. Solid waste management, led by our new GM, Matt Kelleher. He's currently enjoying March break with his family in Nova Scotia this week. And he is supported by a number of directors, one of whom, Mr. Rob Orpin, is actually retiring at the end of this month, and Vince Ferrazza, who is transitioning over to transportation at the end of this month. So significant change coming in the solid waste management group, and a lot of exciting work to be done. Lisa Duncan, who's currently a manager in solid waste, will be taking on an acting director role to support Matt as he continues to drive the division. What does solid waste management do? Well, I think we know what they do, but I don't know that we necessarily appreciate the importance and the scale of the operation that they undertake, servicing over 800,000 residential homes, 7,000 commercial homes, and so on, in addition to providing support and keeping our city clean in all our public spaces, dealing with special events, and the rest. Some of the program highlights, you can see there's been a significant contribution as far as how many materials they manage, and a real focus on diversion. And that is definitely, absolutely a continued and sustained effort on solid waste management's part to inform and educate and develop further programs to help drive our diversion overall. We've still got a way to go, but it's a consistent and sustained effort. One of the new neat things they're looking at is renewable natural gas. I'm not even going to venture to get into what that involves. I think it's self-explanatory, and I certainly wouldn't do it justice. But it does sound like a fascinating and really innovative undertaking that the city is leading under the Solid Waste Management Group. There are other major initiatives. You've all, and council approved long-term waste management strategy. There's aspects of that will be coming through this committee. And also, one of the issues and challenges they're dealing with is contamination reduction. Certainly when, we had a great campaign, what bad things happen when socks and whatnots don't go together. But there's actually tangible impacts from the contamination of our solid waste collections, and they are going to be continuing to drive some efforts in that regard to make sure that everything goes where it ought to go. Then we have our good friends in Toronto Water, led by the King of Water, Lou DiGeronimo. He's the King of Water. And his team, a group of wonderfully talented directors, one of whom as well will be retiring. Graham Harding, I think, is the end of March as well. So we'll be seeing a bit of a change in the Toronto Water management structure. And as far as what does Toronto Water do, that we know, and they do it extremely well. Toronto has got the best tap water going. A little plug for Lou there. But we're serving 3.6 million residents, service into York Region, services tied with Peel Region as well, an incredibly scaled infrastructure, the value of which is staggering. I've actually never been this excited talking about sanitary sewers in my life, but you sit down and have a conversation with Lou about the programs and the projects, and you'll find yourself getting pretty energized about it. So the program highlights of Toronto Water is broken out into 3 key groups: the water treatment and supply group, wastewater collection and treatment, and stormwater management, all of which involve some pretty complicated and complex efforts, and all of which are being rolled out across the city in various tranches. One major initiative of many, the Combined Sewer Overflow Project, the Ashbridges Bay Outfall, over $3.4 billion dedicated to managing stormwater in the city. Many of these projects have been before you already for approval, and that work will continue over the next 10 years and make a massive, massive contribution to the quality of water that reaches the city, the Lake Ontario and the Inner Harbour and beyond. They've also got a big project underway dealing with basement flooding. They've just released an RFP, and I think responses have come back on EAs to cover the rest of the city in dealing with the basement flooding issue. So there'll be a lot coming that way. So when we start looking at the money being spent to ensure that our water is safe, in the billions of dollars in this year alone and in the 10 years going forward. And then transportation services, our friends in transportation who do more than potholes and snow clearing, though that has certainly been Barbara Gray's life of the last few months. Just underwent a reorganization of the transportation services division, and Barbara's continuing to ensure that her division is aligned to deliver services the best way. That's a work that's still ongoing. And just to keep consistent, it looks like we have another director who's going to be retiring, Miles Curry. I wish he was here. Everybody knows, he's in Mexico. All right, he's practicing retirement already. But Miles is retiring the end of April, and as I mentioned previously, Vince from Solid Waste is going to be joining Transportation Services as the Director of Policy Planning and Support. Oh, no, he's not. That was what you're doing now. What are you going over there to do, Vince? There you go. So he's going to be the Director of the Operations Group. Renaissance man, can do a little bit of everything. So program highlights, I think we see every day in our lives what transportation contributes to the way we move around the city, be it by foot, 2 wheels, or 4 wheels. Thousands of kilometers of road, thousands of kilometers of sidewalk, and a great deal of infrastructure that supports the safe and free traveling of vehicles, pedestrians, and such. Major focus on safety. So Vision Zero was a huge focus last year. It continues to be. Barbara and the team, Jackie, Ashley, all of them are continuing to work on how we can improve our city roads to enhance safety. And you'll be hearing definitely much more about that. We're targeting, I think, June of this year to come back with Vision Zero 2.0 in the absence of another reference. Managing congestion, the congestion management plan that was approved by council, dealing with the way we use our traffic signals to try to manage and assist with the flows, as well as pedestrian travel with traffic signal optimization. So a great deal of work happening to try to keep the city moving safely and freely. In addition, the major initiatives that you're going to be hearing further about and very soon on the King Street pilot, and the continuing work towards building out our cycling infrastructure across the city. And now I'm going to ask my friend Juliana to speak about Parks, Forestry, and Recreation.
Good morning, everyone. So under Community and Social Services, there's one division that's going to be providing the main support to this committee, and that's Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, and it's made up of 7 branches or units. They're all reporting to our wonderful GM, Jeannie Romoff. So they're identified here on the slide. There's 2 units in particular that will be supporting this committee, and that's Urban Forestry, led by Jason Doyle, who's here today, and Parks, which is led by Richard Ubbins. So this presentation will focus largely on those 2 areas. And I think as we can all appreciate, the city's parks, our ravines, our natural environment, our recreational facilities are all critical elements in terms of building, maintaining a livable, sustainable city for all of our residents. It's where Torontonians come together to relax, to have fun. They develop different skills. More importantly, they build connections with their communities, their neighborhoods, and their neighbors. So urban forestry focuses on maintaining and protecting our urban forests, our tree canopy, while Parks manages, maintains, develops, and programs our extensive network of parks across the city. So each of the city's 1,600 parks are inspected at least once a year, and in 2018, the division actually launched a new tool to help them more proactively identify maintenance and service requirements in our parks. They also implemented a traffic management plan for Bluffers Park, and that was to manage the high volume of vehicles and visitors wanting to access the park. Urban Forestry had a busy year. They completed 176,000 tree inspections. They planted 120,000 new trees, and that was both on public and private lands. So in total, we have 10.2 million trees across the city, 4.7 of which are on city-owned lands. Pardon? They're all alive. Jason, make sure of that. Anyway, suffice to say, there's a growing demand and a consistent demand for parks and green spaces, and that demand continues to grow, as does the public expectation for quality parks and quality programming within those parks. So Council has approved strategies to help manage and grow our natural environments and to help meet the growing expectations from the public and the growing demand. So we have the Ravine Strategy, which Council approved in 2017, and that the implementation plan to bring that strategy to life is coming forward later this year. We have the Parkland Strategy. It's a 20-year strategy, and that's to guide the long-term planning for new parks, for expansions, and for improvements within our parks. And the Forest Management Plan is a 10-year plan which ends in 2022, and it's really driving towards our goal of achieving 40% tree canopy coverage across the city. We're also completing a tree canopy study this year, the results of which are coming forward this spring, and that study is going to identify opportunities to help us get to that 40% coverage using both private and public lands. I'm going to turn it over to Josie, I think.
Thank you. Good morning to the committee. And I'm going to be taking the opportunity to actually talk about the Environment and Energy Division, which supports this committee. And if we go to the next page, the group is under Jim Baxter, our fearless leader here. And what this group actually does, it basically is primed to implement the actual environmental goals and objectives for the City of Toronto. It takes prime lead on that. Jim actually has a team of 6 individuals, managers, as you'll see there. The group actually is about 93 people. There's about 31 people that were added through the Transform TO initiative in the last couple of years, as well as a $55 million gross budget with 64% tax supported. The next page. Key program highlights here. It's really critical to understand the way in which the program actually gets its work done. It does provide expertise from a building system, energy systems perspective, renewable energy systems, also focuses on green roofs, community outreach, and climate resilience support also. If you go to the next one. Some key program highlights, as you can see there. We obviously support the residents and the businesses of the City of Toronto. We actually do a lot of financial assistance through incentives and further engagement. And you'll see some key initiatives there, in particular the first one, $52 million in finance provided for deep energy retrofits. We also have a $300 million green debenture that was done last year. And some of the work on low-carbon thermal networks, Etobicoke Civic Centre, you'll see a little bit about that on the next page. Those are really critical. And also just the engagement that we do as with other businesses around commuters and working with corporations and organizations around that to make sure we're promoting this. And also home energy retrofit, if we go to the next, okay, doesn't matter. It was the next one before, but that's okay. Home energy program, and we also do support the home energy retrofits, deep retrofits. This page in particular focuses on carbon emissions, and if you look at zero waste buildings, within our own buildings, you'll see 89% waste diversion on 11 of our largest buildings. You'll also see something around $17 million annually utility cost savings that we've had within the city facilities too. And then you'll see Etobicoke Civic Centre at the bottom there, which is really a net zero. It's our first building that we're actually supporting in this way, which really anchors the overall carbon thermal energy retrofit discussion we just had. Now, the next page. Transform TO, as you would probably know, many of you, it actually got approved back in 2017 through council, 2018, 2017. And you will see now in 2019, 2020, we'll be reporting back to council with an update. And the key thing here is that we are on track. And we're at 33% reduction from our 1990 levels. And by 2020, we would have, our target had been at 30%. So I just wanted to just raise that. I know that came up through the budget review too. If you go to the next page, which is major initiatives, the focus there is really around Clean Toronto. It's, again, resident engagement, do quite a bit of that throughout the month of April. And we're going to continue with some of our key programs, whether it's the Better Building Partnership, or we continue with some of the waste reduction grant awards that we have, and working with actually getting our message out to the actual residents and to our own divisions, and working with them to make sure that we're promoting the requirement around environmental issues. And Jim and his team do work with the Resiliency Office on a regular basis, as Elliot is also bringing a report to committee in the month of May to review the resilience strategy. So that's the team. Thank you.
So as far as the work plan for the committee, we've given you a couple of slides that give you a few of the key reports. This certainly is not the full work plan for this committee. As you've seen today, there are a variety of reports that aren't listed here, but you see with Transform TO and Parkland Strategy in Q2, Q3, Reimagining Young and Vision Zero Road Safety, Q4, the Electric Mobility Strategy and Congestion Management Plan. So I think really this, I started thinking about what all this committee is going to see and the work that we're going to accomplish. It spans from roads to recycling, from sewers to cycling, water to waste, greenhouse gas to green space. So it's an absolutely tremendous portfolio of work. A number of fantastically run divisions that are going to be bringing that work to you, and some incredible opportunity for us as a city. So thank you, and the division heads and we are here for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Questions for the presenters? Questions of staff?
I made a whole list of the reports and when they were going to come, but I didn't flip ahead in the presentation, and they seem to be all there. Is there any way of narrowing down, like Q2 can be a pretty long time. Is there any way of, thanks, yeah, three. Yeah.
Shoot.
But is there any way of narrowing it down to, even if there was just some kind of heads up to that this is coming on the next agenda or in 2 weeks? Because given that we have 1 week to prepare ourselves and the community has to prepare to ensure they can be here to comment, it would just be incredibly helpful, particularly around the Parkland Strategy, Transform TO, the Ravine Strategy, the cycling piece, just to allow for us to get
So through you, Mr. Chair, certainly for the purposes of the presentation, Councillor Layton, we've given it in quarters. From an agenda forecasting and planning standpoint, we have it by committee, the intended dates. So we absolutely can give you a more detailed look of when we're expecting some of these things. Sometimes things occur and it shifts a bit.
Sure, yeah.
But we will, based on our best laid plans, absolutely provide you with the meeting.
I'm not so much concerned if it's pushed out a month. It's more if we only have a week to prepare. I don't know about my colleagues here. The one thing I'm finding particularly difficult is not the additional constituency work. It's the it's preparing for the legislative cycle, just because there's not much time to lead up and research reports. So anything, even if it's just before Q2, saying, here's your Q2 reports for this particular committee, I'm sure other committees would find that valuable as well, but that would be very useful. Not in something formal to publish publicly, but just for our internal organizing, that would be very, very, very helpful.
Happy to do so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I have a few questions. So the first is, and it's not, the reports are useful to know when they're coming, but I'm also wondering if we have an idea of when we're expecting any major provincial legislations that could impact our decision-making, for example, around waste, because I know that's in the works, but also similarly around like environment and climate, like, do we know what's down the pipeline and how are these affecting any of the reports and decision-making that we have coming?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that we can, certainly the various division heads, in addition to the city manager's office, have relationships with the other levels of government. We'll have a sense of things that we're being consulted on. But I think it's a fair point that we keep an eye to that. Certainly, all of the individual policy work as it gets done, and as we do jurisdictional reviews, the staff make every effort to ensure we know what other external factors may impact. But, you know, we can have a look at this point in time to see if there's anything coming down the pipe that we might expect, and that might help. We can look at giving you an update on where any of that may be. But certainly, it's we do take effort to ensure that the work that we do is informed by the work that's being done by others, especially if there's any pending legislative change.
Okay, just so we have the flexibility to either accelerate or delay based on.
Absolutely.
And then this is a very specific question, but I'm very interested. So the strategy, the forest management strategy, the goal is 40%. What are we at right now?
Janie will.
So I'm actually going to, through the chair, ask Jason to answer, but it is not a short-term strategy, it's a long-term strategy, so although the plan may be 10 years, the actual strategy to get to 40% is much longer.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we're at 26%.
26, okay. So 14% more over 10 years?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a long-term strategy. The goal to achieve a 40% tree canopy target is 2050, 2057.
2057. Okay, and then, thank you. And then my last question is, in terms of the reports, in the timelines, you mentioned the resiliency strategy report is probably May?
It's correct.
Okay, and then that's a strategy, there's not an implementation or an action plan associated with that. That's just an overview of what we should be doing, what are the principles, the objectives that should be covered under such a resiliency strategy?
So I just want to clarify, the resiliency strategy will be going to exec committee. That's where it was requested to go last year.
Okay.
It will have an overall strategy. It will have key principles. It will have a high-level roadmap, but the implementation plan in detail will be built through the appropriate groups that will be requested to do so.
And do we know roughly when that implementation plan, what's the gap between the strategy and then rolling out the implementation plan or the action plan?
I actually, I think the timeline that we were dealing with, first of all, a high-level implementation plan, I would say within this year they'll be putting more information around that, what that looks like. But some of it actually has started already, to tell you the truth. And some that there's four key items that they're going to be working through. And I would say we would really be clear within this year what that would look like. But some would actually start in parallel implementing.
Okay. And I'm just asking because I see that Transform TO, the next plan is being released in Q3. Is that, or the next?
So Transform TO is reporting in Q3?
Yeah, we're, and through the chair, so we're required by the terms of the Transform TO report that we have to come back every 2 years and to report to council on status update. The way Transform TO is being implemented is in 4-year tranches. The first tranche commenced in 2017. So we're coming back to this committee in Q3 with the plan for the second 4-year tranche.
Okay, so there's the ability for us to be informed through the resiliency strategy in advance of that.
Correct.
There may be potential synergies, so I think we should be always looking at the two together.
So through the chair, council, your point is very valid. The teams are working together. Jim and Elliot are working together to make sure the connections are there and that we're in no way and not actually aligning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKelvey. Any other questions for the presenters, for staff? Councillor Deputy Mayor Menawong.
Yeah, so our agendas are going to be a little bit thicker going forward. I was a little disappointed that we're not doing more, so we'll be doing more.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you will be doing more. We intend to exhaust you.
Well,
Now, back in the day.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest committees around.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt.
Yeah, I would say through you, Mr. Chair, it also, gives rise to the volume of work that's actually going on right now that was approved by council last term, and shovels in the ground or soon to be in the ground, tenders issued. So there is a large volume of work that is happening, and there is a large volume of work yet to come, and you will see it.
It's going to be, and so I'm glad to hear that, and it's going to be spaced out evenly, so, we're not going to be getting like a thin book one meeting and then a thick binder the next meeting, then a thin.
So through you, Mr. Chair, certainly as we're trying to balance the council agendas across all the various committees, and this is a new structure for everyone, so we're learning as we go. But we have a real focus on trying to make sure that the agendas are balanced, that there isn't an overloading of one and then nothing on the next, because that translates across all the committees to a quite uneven council agenda as well. So a lot of work is going into modifying and trying to meet timelines, but at the same time balancing. You're absolutely right on.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And any other questions? No? I would just simply thank you for all your great work. This is an extremely impressive lineup of reports and city initiatives that we're going to be reviewing this term. Very exciting, and we look forward to receiving them. And I'm also happy to say that I got my Cycle Toronto renewal in the mail, Councillor Layton, my Cycle Toronto renewal. Very excited. Chuck, if we can have a close-up here. And excited to get my bike out of the garage. No, you have to pay $30, Councillor.
Is that a motion to receive?
Motion to receive the presentation. Deputy Mayor, all those in favor? It's received. Now we can go to the new items. The first item is Councillor Wong Tam's motion, coordination of City of Toronto TTC infrastructure projects affecting Shooter Street and Victoria Street. Any questions for staff? It's a motion to arrange a meeting, so I will move it. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The next one is for me. I'm sure, like most of you, we get dozens of calls about basement flooding in the areas that have not been subject to infrastructure upgrades. When we tell them that many of the RFPs will be going out this quarter, they say, can you make it faster? So all this motion does is ask staff to consider going out to many of the RFPs that we're waiting on earlier in the quarter than later in the quarter. Are there any questions for staff? Speakers, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. This is a more micro issue. This situation on Bathurst Street has been going on for a year. Our office has devoted hundreds of hours of staff time, costing us thousands of dollars. I guess city staff are involved as well as the third-party builder. We're working with the mayor's office. This is simply requesting a high-level meeting to bring everybody into the same room and get it resolved once and for all. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Well, thank you very much. That concludes our business for today. We are adjourned. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Thank you to the clerk staff. Thank you for councillors and committee members. And have a great day.
So we'll correct this when we post the rest of it, but your letter has the wrong date.
You made
the title for the chief engineer.